Hyer, thank you so much for coming on with us. We should let everybody know this is actually the second time we're chatting. We wanted you back for more. Actually, we had some technical difficulties with that podcast, which we were all in love with, but we're back here again to rehash everything and reshare accurately and successfully. And honestly, I'm really kind of glad it happened selfishly because I love chatting with you, and I'm glad that you're back on. Last time I cried, so we're going to try. Maybe I'll try not to cry this time.
I'll cry this
Maybe
time.
I'll cry more. Who knows?
Well, I'm glad to be back. Thanks for having me on again.
Repeat guests.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, I think when you reached out to us, we were most compelled on the surface by the amount of money, the large amount of money that you all ended up repaying. So maybe we start there. We know now that there's a lot more to your story and your journey, but I think that's a really great place to start.
Sure. Well, I'm a millennial through and through, and I grew up believing that if you went to college, you'd get $100,000 as your first salary right out of school. So why not borrow a bunch of money to get there? Well, fast forward a decade and then some, we're not counting. And we all know that's not true. That's not the way the world works. But the bottom line is my husband and I woke up and found out that we had indeed by ourselves borrowed over $100,000 in student loans that we didn't need. We worked. We had parents' help. We went to in-state schools. We had scholarships. I did a paid internship. But when that little letter came in the mailbox and said, you're qualified for student loans, I was thrilled to take it out. Just thrilled. And I did. And then we paid the consequences and we paid it all off. So that's a little background on our student loan journey.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit, I think if I remember correctly, you had some fun though. And I always love asking this question. Like, yes, I know that we all have like massive regrets and they don't necessarily compensate for the pain that's there too. But I would love to hear like how did that money get spent? And is there anything that you don't regret doing?
Yeah, I appreciate that because you're right. There's mistakes that we've made with money, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. And yeah, there are a lot of regrets there, but it was fun in the moment and a lot of things we learned from. And I just appreciate your noting that, yeah, that fun did happen, and yeah, there were consequences. But did we have fun? Yes. Let me tell you a little bit about what we spent our student loans on. Because, I don't know if you know this, America, but after your student loans pay tuition at your university, the rest comes in cash in your pocket, and you can spend it on whatever you want, because cash is not traceable, right? Mm-hmm. So most responsible students take their student loans and spend it on food, maybe a computer, but we spent ours on cruises, travel, new computers when we didn't need them. And I've actually counseled people later, now that I'm on the good side, I'm no longer on the dark side, borrowing my way out, that, they're still paying off their student loans that they spent on fraternity dues, designer dogs, luxury furniture. I mean, it's cash. And a 19-year-old like myself cannot necessarily make a good decision. And we certainly did. But
I don't trust 38-year-old me with cash.
I know, right?
Yeah. Cash is it's a horrible thing to have.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there was no accountability with the leftover portion after the tuition was paid. And a perfect example of this is we were able to fund living abroad in France while I got my master's degree, thanks to our student loans. And there was no student loan guidance counselor saying, no, don't take that trip to Scotland this weekend. That's a student loan amount of money you're spending, right? So we had a great time living abroad. We loved it, but we paid for it for the next 7 years.
Yeah. I mean, what an incredible experience, though, that you may not have gotten without doing what you did.
It's true. But could we have never done that? That said, we were working after we graduated, and could we have saved up and paid for that ourselves? Yeah, we could have. Let me give myself the bad news. The bad news was I took the easy way out, and if I had just been patient, just 1 year. If I had just waited 1 year and saved instead of traveling, going on cruises. I didn't buy a designer dog, but buying designer dogs.
Right.
Then we could have paid for it in cash and cash flowed it. Instead, we did the expensive, quick way.
Yeah. So, okay, tell us a little bit about like the timeline of all this. So you take out the loans during college, and then when do kids, because I know kids come into your life, quite a few. That's my favorite part. So tell us a little bit about like how that happened, and then ultimately when you decided I've got to get this paid off, and how you went about doing that. That was a lot. So maybe we start with like just a brief, like how did this all happen?
Let's look at the timeline. When I went to college, I met my now husband barely into the first semester, and we knew we were getting married. So why wait 4 years? Let's get married while we're in college. And we did. So we had our first baby just months after I graduated. Today, fast forward, since that beautiful day in 2009 when we got married, we have, I almost said 10 children. My oldest is 10. We have 5 children. It feels like 10 sometimes.
I bet it does. It's like exponential noise the more you have to.
That's right. That's right. So I have a 10-year-old, an 8.5-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and then my baby's 6 months old at the time of this recording.
Wow. So, okay, that's funny because I don't remember your baby being that little. Is it a boy or girl?
It's a boy. His name's Opie. He's the best.
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet. And I know I shared this, and listeners have heard this before, but our 3-year-old daughter, her dream is to have 5 babies. She wants to be you when she grows up.
To the number.
And if you say, like, if you show some woman with like 4 babies, she's like, no, 5.
That's amazing. That is so sweet. Yeah, so we started out our journey with like shackles around our legs, right, in student loans. And then anybody listening to this podcast will know by now that I have a faith background. We're believers in Jesus in my house. And so there was a lot of prayer going on at the same time. So we would be praying stuff like, God, please give us increase. But the only problem is if you're not specific, God will increase something else. So he increased our children when I was asking for increase in salary. So every time we got a raise, it was like we had another baby, So the margin in our life stayed undesirably thin as we grew our family.
Yeah, as babies do to you. Yes.
It's all worth it. Don't worry about the headlines saying it costs $300,000 to raise a baby. Right. Don't worry about that. It's all worth it.
I saw that the other day. It is horrifying, isn't it? It's probably not wrong.
It's pretty rough, and I'm like, man, we really got to buy another car seat. Is that a necessity? All right, yeah, it's a necessity.
This bubble wrap is triple ply, man.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so the babies came along, and then you woke up and decided, what was that like?
Yeah, so by baby number 2, we had been forced to address our financial situation because, as anybody with student loans probably experienced, there's a grace period after you graduate before you have to start repaying your loans in a normal atmosphere, right? Not during a pause on student loans during a presidential administration, because that didn't happen when my husband and I graduated. There was no pause on having to pay your stuff back. So you have your grace period, and then you have to start paying something back. And at this point, we graduated, we were out of school, and then I re-enrolled in a master's program, so our student loans still were not due, because when you're actively enrolled, then they're not due again. So this is why there was so much time between first baby and second baby, and then finally starting to recognize how much we paid in student loans. Because I didn't mention this on this podcast yet, but we were totally oblivious to how much we had spent. I thought we had spent $40,000, which was a colossal ton to me.
Yeah.
I did not know it was more than 6 figures.
Wow.
And people say
that would have been devastating.
It was devastating. And so I will come back to answer your question, but just while we're on this little tangent, people will ask me, how could you possibly not have known how much you borrowed? To which I answer, there's literally a TV show called I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant. Right?
Yes.
And then at the end of the episode, they say, and then I had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, we did not have that kind of administrative focus when we were in our early 20s. We just simply didn't know. So anyway, when we had our son, Huck, we were done being in the grace period. We had finally finished graduating all the extra things that we had enrolled in, and we just had to start paying stuff back. So as the letters started to come, that's when the light bulb went off, and I tried to turn it off, and it just kept coming back on as each new letter arrived saying, we want more of your money, please. So anyway, my daughter was 2, my son was an infant, and we've realized, oh my gosh, we have $40,000 in student loans. That's when my husband said, that's not right. And I agreed. I said, this is not right. Mm-hmm. And we found out, no, it was $77,000. And then, that's not right either. And then the total was $156,000 we had needlessly borrowed.
Wow. What did you think?
I didn't have a thought. Like, my brain flatlined. And it was just emotions. There was no thinking. It was just feeling like I have doomed my children, feeling like I've made a huge mistake, feeling like I've failed my husband. Like, we're done having fun. We grew up right away, right?
Wow.
Yeah, because while my other friends who started having kids were taking them to Disney and, renting a beach house with their family, we were trying to figure out how we could cram in extra jobs and spend yet less again on groceries to try to pay these suckers off. So it was awful. It was awful.
So for anybody who is hit with that realization now, later, whenever, to whatever degree it is, what is your suggestion looking back to manage that emotion in any kind of way that's even resembles positivity, or even just being able to put your hands around it and manage it yourself instead of feeling owned by it?
Yeah. If I could give a listener out there a hug right now and tell them it's going to be okay, I would say it's going to be okay, asterisk. The asterisk being you have to do something. You can't self-care your way out of this. You can't anxiety meds your way out of this. If you're in a pile of debt, as we were, there's only one way out, and that's paying it off. Maybe your listeners have credit card debt. There's no cancellation forgiveness for car loans, right? So whatever it is, you're going to have to pay it off. And so try not to think about the whole thing. Think about the smallest thing. That's what we had to do. We had 28 different disbursements, and I could not think every day about 28 different loans that were due. I had to focus on the smallest thing because I couldn't pay off $40,000 in one fell swoop. I could not think about that largest loan amount, but I could think about that $600 loan and how, okay, if I pay off $50 extra every other week, that'll take however long that math works out to with all the interest and stuff. So focus on what you can achieve. What does the serenity prayer say? God, grant me the peace to know the things I can change, the serenity to not change the things I can't change, and the peace to know the difference, the wisdom to know the difference. I'm sorry, listeners, for that awful paraphrase.
It got us there.
I'm a big reader of the King James paraphrase version of all the things.
The King James Cliff Notes.
Yes, that's it. So anyway, Google serenity prayer and think about that. We can't change the law. I cannot change the fact that I borrowed student loans, but I can change how quickly I pay them off if I do some things like budget every month with my husband, if I control my spending, if I don't borrow more, if I work more or earn more, right? These are things in our control. Focus on the things that are in your control. That's what I would say to somebody who is drowning.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned that you purposefully did not consolidate, or you may have said, I don't want to, you use your words.
How
but you
dare
didn't.
you suggest
You
something I
said. So you didn't end up consolidating. Why did you make that decision? And do you, looking back, think it was a good one?
Oh yeah. I am so glad we didn't consolidate. Because what I learned about money is that it's not just math, it's emotional. And if I had a mortgage of student loans, if I just had, $1,300 of student loans for the next 25 years, that would have been awful, and that would have been our reality. But instead, we could focus on individual loans, and we could prove our power over them one at a time. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's been a tactic of war for millennia to divide and conquer. And that's what we did. That's what we had to do.
I love your mentality on that. Like the small, we can do this. We can do this. We just did this. We just did it again. Like it's in my world of work, it's the exact same feeling.
Yeah.
You're attacking these giant Goliaths.
Yeah.
And you have to go, hey, I got an ankle. Like that. I'm going to put that ankle right here. And then I'm going to go for the knee.
It doesn't really change no matter what you're doing. Even if it is a savings goals and investing goals, it's like we have times where we're able to invest something big. And then there's times when it's like, it may be something small, and just keep going, just stay consistent. It's amazing how much consistency, no matter what money goal it is, and probably life goal for that matter, is so powerful.
It's so powerful. I think it's really important to know yourself at this point, because I am a victim of shiny object syndrome. I love to do the next new thing. I love new ideas. I love coming up with new solutions. But guess what? Results only get done if you focus on that old, not shiny anymore thing, and you finish that first. Yep. There's that project management technique that says if you got thing A, thing B, and thing C to do, you need to focus on A. And only when you're done do you move on to B. Yep. And for us, that was the same thing with our money.
Yeah.
That's awesome. How quickly or how slowly did you get through the pity party phase? When the news hit you, are we talking weeks, days, an afternoon? How quickly did you get into stand up and I'm going to do this?
Yeah. I think it went from shock in a weekend to shame and action at the same time, right? Like my self-loathing came out in a fury. And when I say shame, I'm serious. Like I was embarrassed, mortified, just totally consumed by what I had done to my family, right?
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, they were unnecessary student loans, and they really were. They were not necessary. And so that shame that I felt at having made those terrible financial decisions that didn't just affect me, right? That's my husband who has to work extra. That's my children who don't get to do childhood things. That propelled me to take action. And so those were administrative, boring things like writing all of my debts down, our debts down on an Excel sheet. And then I printed out just 3 letter-sized pages where I had made a visual aid so I could scratch off the loans as we paid them off. And it was It was super simple. I just took like each loan and then made a box in Excel, and each box was $100. And then I just visually had these like rows of boxes through the in the papers, and then whenever I'd go into our master bathroom and we could pay another one off, I scratched it out, and I lived to scratch out another box.
Scratch it out, make progress.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I have so many questions, but we'll be right here for 3 hours.
I know,
if I
right?
keep talking, so.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about what you did and the sacrifices that you did end up making to pay off all of this debt. Like what, from a tactical perspective and a work perspective and a literally going out and generating the money to make this happen, what did that look like for you all?
You got it. So in just like you said, there were 2 things we could do. We could limit outgo and we could increase income. And those were the only 2 levers we had to function. And when it came to trying to increase our income, we really focused on what side hustles we could do while we had a bunch of little kids in the house, right? And so my husband worked Starbucks in the morning, Apple in the daytime, and Melting Pot at night.
Can we pause there just for a second? Like people, I've never in my life worked 3 jobs simultaneously. Like it's an insane amount of dedication. Like I just want to commend that on the front end. Like that is true dedication across the board on y'all's part.
With babies, I can't even imagine.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you.
No, I was just thinking about it, and my response is, yep, it sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's important to tell people. Like, it isn't going to be fun. And a lot of this isn't fun. Starting your own business, growing your own thing, trying to get to any goal is like the majority of it, or at least at the beginning, it's ugly. It's hard. It's like feels sticky, and it feels like you're doing it wrong most of the time too. I don't know if that was true for you all, but like anything that I've ever done that's been really, really hard, it feels like in the midst of it being hard, you also have the double whammy of feeling like you aren't actually doing it right.
I feel that. And we had plenty of people who said, who cares? You're always going to have debt, just whatever.
Wow.
Why bother doing this? And, I wanted to be debt free so my children could be free. But what I didn't know 10 years ago when I was in college, whatever, was that today I would need to take care of my parents. And if I was, and here comes, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
And if I was trapped by all those loans, could I fly down to help my mom? Could I pay for a nursing home? No,
Right.
I couldn't. And was I imagining that now? No, I was imagining going on canoe trips with my dad. But instead, we're arranging care for him. Could I do that if we hadn't have gone on the rampage and paid off all our loans? No.
Yep.
I would be like, okay, Mom, when you're done taking care of Dad, can you take care of me?
Yeah.
But she needs our help. And you know what? It's hard to help your aging parents if you're broke.
Yeah. That gives me chills. Yeah. I mean, you really did give yourself a gift. You gave a gift to your future self. And I know people talk about that a lot, but you very literally did it. And this is what that actually looks like when people talk about that. Like, you're giving yourself, your future self, a gift. Like, nobody ever, or very rarely do we look back and go like, yeah, it already happened. And that's what this actually looks like in reality.
Where you're sitting right now, when you look at the experience as a whole, what are your feelings about it? Do you feel it was a test? You said your family is entrenched in faith, and is that Job for you? Is that something that was thrown on you, or is that something that you look at with, I'm sure, a lot of different emotions? But how do you view it now?
Yeah, how do I view it now? More like a desert season. Like, we thought the promised land, even if you didn't grow up in church, the promised land is like this amazing place when you've arrived, right? And I think we thought the promised land was going to be, we're married and we've got our own life and now we can do anything. And instead we walked the desert of hard work and lots of jobs and budgeting our eyeballs out till we wanted to scream. Mm-hmm. For, it took us like 6.5 years to pay it all off. And by the way, I kept brainwashing myself along the way. I was like, it's only going to take 2 years. It's only going to take 3 years.
It's the only way to do it. Lie yourself through it.
Yeah. Yes. I was like, my employer's going to double my salary.
Yes.
Like, of course they are. Yeah. So it was definitely a desert time. But there were moments where I can look back and I know, wow, that was not me. That was something bigger than me. Like, that was God. We wrote a check, for an example. We wrote a check out of our giving budget because we still gave during the whole time, during the whole thing.
Wild.
And I have multiple times said how much we budgeted, but that didn't mean we were budgeting experts. That didn't mean we didn't make mistakes or forget things, right? So we had written a check, and then the check didn't get cashed. We had donated to somebody at our church, and it was months before they cashed that check. Mm-hmm. And we forgot about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we had written the $600 check, and then when it came out of our account, we were going to go negative, and we were in a panic, and we were ticked.
Yeah.
Like, God, like, how could you let our giving, screw us? That's not the point. And then we checked the mailbox, and somebody had written us a check for $605.
Whoa.
And they said, I don't know why I'm writing this to you, but
That's amazing.
it was on my heart to write this to you. I am not kidding you.
That's just like brought tears to my eyes. There we go again.
It's true. 600,
That's
605.
phenomenal.
It's like in the Hebrew Bible, God goes by many names, and they tell us his characteristics, and one of them is Adonai El Roy, and that's my God who sees me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, he sees us. He sees us in the trenches, and he's not going to let us go hungry or be evicted.
Yeah.
Not today.
Not today. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's triumph. Yeah.
Having the an experience like that so quickly takes all of that anxiety and just kind of goes, it's all right. Here, this whole thing is solved. Like that reminder that it's all chaos, right? And it's not your job to fix the chaos. It's your job to stay true to your belief and stay true to who you are and let that be what it is. Like you gave because you give, and that's awesome.
Right. We give not because we're expecting something back, but in our house we say Hyers or givers. Right. My last name's Hyer. To any of our listeners who are like, that's weird. Hyers or givers. Even if it doesn't make sense, like that's just who we are.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was very tempting because everybody listening is gonna be like, yeah, but seriously, like while you had these goals, I'm like, yeah, okay. It was very tempting to think like, okay, God, you can like go without this tithe for a month, right? Like it would be great if I could throw that on this last loan. And that in itself was a exercise in diligence and in believing that life is not just us. It's about something bigger than us. And we got to remember that. And for people of faith, like my husband and I, we're remembering that what we have is from God. And this little 10% is just our way of recognizing that like it came from somebody else. It came from God. And we're going to manage the other 90. And we're so thankful for the 90% instead of, oh man, 10%, right? We're going to focus on the 90.
I like that. So I know you've discussed like what your husband was carrying this load of 3 jobs. I think if I remember correctly, you were also working quite hard. Do you want to share any of what you went through too?
Absolutely. My challenge with working the extra jobs was I had children who are at home and for a lot of the last 7 years have been needing their mom, like as I breastfed children. Sorry to get graphic, but it was just something that they had to be with me. So the challenge was, how do I make extra money at home? How do I do this with them? So that looked like waking up early in the morning, 3:00, so that I could teach online to kids in different countries, English from 3:30 to 6:30 in the morning. Then I'd get the kids ready, go to their daycare or their school. Then I would do my 9 to 5. But over my lunch break, I would go walk a dog or let a dog out that I was dog sitting on Rover. You can still look that app up and dog sit or get babysitting for your dog on Rover. And then on weekends, I would Uber. The kids would go next door to a good friend's house, and she had kids, we had kids, and our kids would just watch popcorn and a movie together, and I would go Uber driving. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Wow.
Man.
We had to have some kind of dynamite to break up the log jam. We had to add extra income. There was no way around it.
There was no other way to do it.
There was no way around it. I worked for I see now that I should not have taken the job I took. I worked for I worked for the state, and your earning is capped. Like I could work as hard as I wanted. I could bring as many results as I wanted, and my salary wasn't going to change.
It just doesn't. Can't.
I did not really get that then. And then my husband's a police officer. Same deal. Like you can work as hard or as lazy as you want, and the result is going to be the same. So for us, we should have taken better job careers. We know that now. So the only thing we knew to do was to just work more hours. Right? We traded time for money instead of like expertise for money. I would do that differently if I had to do it again.
Yeah. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about your perspective on that? Because I think it is really important, and it's not something that you really understand when you're younger. I know I didn't either. Like, I think you come out of college, especially if you're like even slightly type A or slightly like ambitious, and your assumption is like the harder I work, the more money I'll make, which can be true in certain situations. Like corporate is really good about rewarding that. It also is a really great way to drain you really quickly if you're not also working smart. But either way, I feel like there's that perspective that you're talking about is important. But can you explain to us, like, what does that look like for you? And when, like, I don't know, when did that, realization take place, or what does it look like for you now?
Yeah, I actually did leave that job at the state, which I worked with wonderful people. I really enjoyed the work I was doing, but I just woke up one day and I thought, this is dumb. I want to bring value. I want to bring results. And there are places who will reward me for those results. I should align my career with the people who are doing those things, making those things happen. So yeah, if I had to go back, I would change that. But how did I wake up? I think I was just talking to an HR person or my supervisor. I really trusted my boss, my leader, and I said, like, what does this look like? And she goes, well, you can have my job when I retire in 15 years. And I realized that's the only path for me here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have to do this same thing for more than a decade. And hopefully she retires then. Maybe she decides, 90 is the new 70 and stays on, right?
Which definitely could happen these days.
Yeah. So when we were talking about career paths, so that's one thing I would definitely encourage younger listeners to do is like dive into it. What does your career path look like? Mm-hmm. When I realized, there's nothing here for me, it was a lot easier to leave.
Yeah. So what do you do? I know you mentioned earlier that you do counsel people, families who are getting out of debt. Is that still part of your life? And what does that look like now?
Yeah, I can't help it. People, it's like a moth to a flame. They'll be like, a zillion children and you don't have any credit cards? I'll say, yeah. And they go, how did that happen? How do you possibly live without a car note? And I go, well, just look at my 2004 Honda Pilot. That's how.
Right. Us too. Yeah.
Proud old car.
Yes.
Just hit 200,000 miles, baby.
We're close. Did we hit it yet? We're like super close.
Something.
Yeah. Yes.
So at what point are you guys going to change your car?
I don't know. There's so many other things I'd want more.
We have hobbies. Cars are not a hobby of ours.
There's like things in the house that I think I would do. There's vacations I'm not willing to not take while my kids are young. And it's just not, I actually asked, side note, sorry listeners. I was visiting to get my car fixed, and while I was in there talking to the technician or the mechanic, I was like, so by the way, like how like it's at 200,000 or whatever it is now. I was like, what's the biggest mileage you've ever seen on a car? And he was like, Volvo 700,000.
Wow. Safe car.
I was like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, they bring them in like it is more often than you think, is what he told me. And he said that Volvo actually delivers you these little like emblem like stickers when you hit milestones with your miles. Milestones, no pun intended. Milestones with your miles. They give you, so like if you ever see the round stickers, I think they're round on the Volvos, and they have like a number or whatever they have. Y'all need to go check this out because I'm sure I'm describing it wrong. But I thought that was awesome. They actually like sort of reward you for keeping your car longer. And so maybe I'll be one of those owners one day.
We can make some stickers.
Yes! Mine's a Honda, by the way.
Yes.
So we can. Yes.
Make a little 200K sticker. It'll be like number of miles on my car and how much debt we paid off.
Yes, absolutely. So you actually reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you, because we're living in it right now where we have big savings goals, but I also have this balance. It's a constant reminder when you have children, especially when you're not in the baby stage anymore, you've kind of like graduated out of that. And I have an 8-year-old, and I'm like, oh my God, 10 more years with him. 10 more years. That's all I get. And it's like, I literally think it must be back here, because I literally will wake up thinking about it. And I'm like, it's giving me. So that's to say, I'm like, I'm not willing to not go somewhere for a vacation or like a spring break or a fall break, or like to do something with them now. I'm like, but I only get 10 more. I only get 10 more. I only get 10 more Christmases. I'm going to have a good Christmas. Like, it doesn't have to be a ton of stuff, but like, I want, So my question for you is like, how do you balance now? I mean, and by the way, like, I wouldn't have felt that way if I had was in your situation with like debt, and especially a couple years ago when I was like trying to get to some savings goals. Like I was like, that made more sense to me, to like deal with that first. But now I'm like, I'm not willing to give those up completely. So I guess my question for you is like, how do you balance that now that like, I have these kids, I can't just like keep putting everything off.
No, it's a great question. How do we balance the goals and the needs we have for our finances with the goals and needs we have with our children and our spouses? Mm-hmm. I think the first thing that I realized, and I'm learning, people will say, "Oh, give me your mom tips." And I'll go, "I have 5 kids. That doesn't make me a good mom. That just makes me, a fertile mom. Come on." Like, people just assume I'm good at it.
Yeah.
So I'll be the first to say,
you're good at it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I will be the first to say, I learn every day and I get corrected and I realize that my thinking was wrong all the time. So that's just my little disclaimer about parenting and money. Like, I'm sure I've done it wrong. But when we were in debt, we had to be satisfied with the fact that, okay, our children are having the best time of their lives in this creek behind a house.
Yeah.
Like, is a man in a Mickey Mouse suit going to make this better? No, that's going to be creepy, right? Like,
might make it worse.
So there were a lot of like pulling ourselves out of the situation, stopping comparing myself to my neighbors or my friends or whatever who are at different stages of life, and like being satisfied with what we could do. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that I really got convicted about and like had to correct myself on was getting used to telling my kids no. And now I'm used to telling my kids no. But guess what? I can tell them yes. Yeah. So I am having to train myself to use the yes muscle after so many years of no. Right. So like,
that's exciting.
We're going on a trip next weekend. We rented a cabin. We're going to the mountains. It's going to be great. And the kids have started saying, "We're going to have a yes day, Mom." And I'm like, okay.
Exactly. Did they watch that movie?
I guess they started talking about it from friends at school. And so
there's a movie called Yes Day. Have you seen
okay.
Heard of it?
No, not yet.
It has Jennifer Garner in it. Yeah. Well, it's funny because we watched the movie and then my kids started doing it and I did try to do the Yes Day. It's definitely impossible. But I'm just going to throw that out there.
It's more of a maybe day. Yeah. That show Grace and Frankie on Netflix.
Yes.
One of the characters, Frankie, describes how she and her husband Saul had a yes year or something, and they ended up owning a burger joint. And I'm like, okay,
yes, exactly.
I'm not going that far. But I think your original question was like, how do you balance? Like, okay, are we going to put more in our 401k, or are we going to take the kids to Disney? Yeah. Let me pause and think. I don't make decisions on my family's money without my husband. Like we talk about stuff together, and we today just bought a piano. Like,
yay!
Mm-hmm,
That's so exciting.
Many hundreds of dollars. And I'm like, don't you know you can get a piano for free on Craigslist?
You won't regret it. That's great.
Yeah. And he said, look, like it's time to have some quality stuff in our life.
Yeah.
We have paid in time and effort and money. Like we don't have to take the cheap route anymore. So I appreciate his stubbornness because like if it were just me by myself, I'd cheapskate my way out the whole time. And he's making sure we invest in quality things and quality time and quality experiences. So anyway, that's my long roundabout way of saying I'm trying to figure it out. How do you balance it? Yeah. I need the input of my spouse. I need my children to say, yes, day, Mom. And I just try to listen. I don't know. I hope that's helpful in some way.
I love it. I mean, we do the same. We're pretty much the same thing. Matt's more like, let's just do it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I literally am like, sit there and I'm going to do it. Like, but you need to sit there because I'm not going to do it by myself. Yeah. And just keep telling me it's a good idea while I do it, while I make the purchase. So I actually do want to ask about your parenting tips because you have 5 babies. So what's your top parenting tip that comes to mind, or 1 or 2?
Oh my gosh. In what realm? And by
the way, that's a great question. I don't have any specific sector of life in mind, but I do think it'd be interesting to hear how you're teaching your kids about money. But it doesn't have to be money related.
Okay. My favorite parenting hack of all is if you're in a discussion with a kid and they want to do something or anything, which by the way is every single discussion.
Yes.
My favorite parenting hack is just give them options, and whatever option they pick, you're good with, right? It's not, do you want to go to bed, buddy? It's, do you want to go to bed in your blue PJs or in your red PJs?
Uh-huh.
That's my favorite parenting hack, and I use it with my dogs. I use it,
Yes. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Money stuff. My daughter has a lemonade stand, and
Aww.
that has been an amazing tool for learning about money, but money from a broader sense, because she's learning about customer service. She's learning about hard work, because when you're a 10-year-old and you go jump in the pool, or you could sit on the hot corner of a street and schlep lemonade, you want to jump in the pool, but she's learning, wow, I just bought whatever she bought with her money. And I earned all that money. So
it's so sweet.
That's one of the things.
Her. So it's a consistent little business that she's got going on.
Oh yeah, and people are amazing. They'll drive by and they're like, I don't want that, I'm keto, but here's $10.
That's awesome.
Even better.
Even better.
Great. Keep your supply, keep your inventory up, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cute. That's really cute. So is there anything, as you look back, is there anything else that you'd want to say about that experience of both paying back money and then also where you find yourself today, looking forward with where you're going to now go to build wealth or build the future that you want, the financial foundation of the future that you want, so to speak. Where are you focused now?
The thing that comes to mind is this phrase my husband Dave and I told each other all the time when we were getting out. And we said, debt is not forever. And now I think now is not forever, right? We're not going to be in this horrendous real estate market forever, right? We're not going to have to pay for 5 children's college forever, right? We will, this too shall pass. And we had to encourage ourselves about debt's not forever, because when we were first paying off those 28 different loans, when we were going at it really hard, the very first few months, and this goes back to something you were asking about, Matt, we didn't make a dent. Our interest was growing faster than we could pay the stuff off. Month after month, for the first 11 months, our debt was still growing. It sucked. Because I would log into Great Lakes and Navient and Sally Mae and all of the different lenders, and I could see the balance was getting bigger.
Wow.
So it wasn't until we paid off our first 2 loans that the stone started rolling downhill, right? And so we just had to keep telling ourselves, debt is not forever. We're not going to get out of this right away. We have to do this just one foot in front of the other. And so today, this crazy real estate market, Kati Hyer, is not forever, because that's the thing that's, that's our big goal right now, is how do we buy a house in this market? Or do we keep renting? What's the wise thing?
Right.
Yeah. And
well, and it's always, I think, in this world of money and so much discussion around it right now, there's also the what is the wise, smart, money numbers right thing to do. And then there's the what's the right thing to do for you. Then it's hard when you're so in the numbers and looking at it every day to make a different decision. People oftentimes ask me, should I pay my house off or should I keep investing? And the answer is almost always you should definitely have your money in the market, because it's going to be working harder for you. It's going to be making you more money instead of, so that's technically what you should be doing. But is it the right thing for you to do? That's only you can make that decision. Maybe there's reasons why you don't want that debt. It's easier for you to sleep at night. You had money issues as a kid and it's stressful, and you dream of not owing a bit of money. Is it worth paying off your home and not ever having a payment, maybe it is. Like, nobody else can answer that question for you. That's all to say, I feel like sometimes we can so clearly see like what the right thing to do is money-wise, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing for each individual.
Have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was the first thing that came to mind when you were describing that. So anybody Googling, or if you're on the road and you're not supposed to Google, that's illegal. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is like, if you imagine a pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid are the basic things for life, right? Like food, shelter. Mm-hmm. And then as you go up the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs, you finally end at the tip of self-actualization. And so if we had this in a money lens, looking at it through a financial lens, I would think, okay, like, where are they on the hierarchy of needs? Do they have $30,000 and they should invest, or they should pay off their house? Or do they not even have a car yet? Right? Like, where are they? So you have to back out, because like, is investing right for you right now? Oh, you're 17 years old and you need your first like wardrobe to go to school, or to go to your first career job, right? You need
a laptop so you can get a job. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. So it's not like this vehicle is always right all the time. Just like you're saying, you have to consider, like, zoom out. What are my other needs? What's the big grand scheme of things? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your podcast and how faith, and I know you've already spoken a little bit about this, but where faith comes into it and how it continues to play a role in where you're headed financially.
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything better than being a part of something bigger than yourself. Like, the self stinks. Like, we're just these broken things all by ourselves, but a part of something bigger is pretty awesome. So I have a podcast called The Kati Hyer Show, and my first season looks into some ancient scripture called the 31st chapter of Proverbs, which is a book in the Old Testament. And that chapter looks at what is wisdom. And the writer of this book of the Bible personifies wisdom and as the Proverbs 31 woman. So I look at these texts and I do hot takes with them about current money issues. So like, I talk about negotiating at work, and I have my old bosses on to talk about
that's so cool.
Can you get ahead during a recession? We talk about all sorts of fun stuff. Talk about sex and money. Talk about budgeting hacks. We talk about all the fun money things there are to do with just like a little bit of church thrown in there, but not judgy. More like uplifty.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Is there any part of scripture that was eye-opening for you when it came to money, like something surprising, or I cannot believe that XYZ was said or insinuated within scripture about money? And
there's this passage in a book called 2 Kings, and essentially this widow has teenage sons, and she is in debt. I kind of imagine there's lots of holes in the Bible that I'm like, oh, okay, how did that happen or whatever? So I imagine her husband dies and leaves her with a bunch of debt because she is a widow, has 2 teenage sons, and she's in a bunch of debt. And she's in so much debt that the debtors are going to come and take her sons. And that is how they're going to, write all of her accounts. So she runs in desperation to a holy man named Elijah, and she's like, please help me, I'm in debt up to my eyeballs. And we might say, and I'm going to go bankrupt, or they're going to evict me, or they're going to take my car. But she was saying, and they're going to steal my sons, which, by the way, were her only way of an income later. Like, that old society structure was, you took care of your mama, right? She was part of your responsibility.
There was no Social Security. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So she's like, help. What am I going to do? And he goes, what do you have, woman? And she says, I have nothing. Everything is gone. And I have felt that way. And he goes, you don't have nothing. Go home, ask all your, and he says, you don't have nothing. What do you really have? And she says, I've got 1 jar of olive oil. That's it. 1 jar of olive oil. And he's like, all right, listen, you and your sons go back home. Ask all your neighbors for some jars. Go into your house and pour some olive oil into the jars and then sell the oil and pay off your debts. And she's like, it'll never work. But she does what he says. And she goes in to her house. She has her boys go and get neighbors' jars. They come and they fill them up jar after jar after jar. And the miracle of the oil spreads and fills all the jars. And she's like, give me another one, son. And he's like, I can't, Mom. Wow. There's no more jars. We've filled them all up. And she takes the jars, she sells them, and she's free. And I'm like, a miracle. How did this money miracle really happen? Like, she went to church, and he said, hold on tight to your family.
Yeah.
Hold on tight to your community, and work. Bam. That is how we look outside of ourselves, get hope around these crushing money failures that are gonna eat us up, and get our miracle and get forward. Like, how do 2 kids who don't have a clue about anything pay off $200,000? Focused on our family, focused on our community, and we worked, and it paid it off. And when I read that scripture, I was like, wow, it's all there. That's what you need. This is what we need, when we feel isolated and alone and like nobody gets it. Yeah. We get it.
And it's what you all did.
Yep.
Yeah. So how long did y'all end up having to work? How long did it take you while you were working like that?
We were always trading out jobs. We were like, okay, taking in somebody else's dogs to ruin our furniture stinks. What can we do?
Yeah. What else is out there?
What else is out there?
Yeah.
So let's see. When did I quit my last side hustle? I'm trying to remember. Because we were always doing different things, right? I did photography. I did babysitting.
Wow.
We
For people considering what do I go do to make more money of all of that, or even new, like just seeing other people get out of debt now and like seeing all these new jobs available, of all of that, what would you say? Like, hey, dog sitting was really smart because it's flexible, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, well, the end of the last question is, I think we kept doing side hustles until our salaries finally turned into like things where my husband could do overtime. And the snowball was running, the giant amount of money that we were putting on our debt at the end. And our best year, by the way, was $42,000 paying debt off.
Wow.
Until we did the cost benefit analysis and realized, okay, like it's better for me to stay home than to pay a babysitter because I'm not going to make enough with 5 kids in babysitter costs for this side hustle to work. But I think we did 2 and 3 jobs for like 5 years between all of it. Okay. And then what did you just ask me? I lost it.
So of all those jobs, what, like, for people listening in who are like I think it's a hard decision. Like, if you don't have some passion and you're like, I need money, like this is not for my passion, because a lot of side hustles are, but for people who are trying to get out of debt and are looking for quick cash, what do you recommend?
Man, the options are endless today.
Yeah.
When we started out, there was no remote work. Like, that was weird,
Yeah.
You delivered pizzas, which, do people even do that anymore? Or is that all drones today?
I know, right? Or it soon will be. Yeah.
Yeah. Today, the options are endless. Like, back when we were trying to get out of debt, it was not as easy to find a side hustle. But today, you can learn how to sell your stuff on Etsy. You can, you can sell stuff online. You can build websites that make money. You can do all sorts of stuff today. But my favorite side hustles were my skills made me the best money. So don't get paid.
That's really wise.
Don't get paid for what you do. Get paid for what you know.
Yeah.
And when the light bulb finally went off, I was like, geez, why didn't I learn this in college 101? I didn't pay a lot of attention in college. I think we've established that.
I don't think they taught that.
That's very gracious of you. I appreciate that. So, when I finally figured that out, that I'm going to make more money with my skills than I'm going to make scooping poop, and I made more money. So I focused on doing PR side hustles. I had some clients who needed marketing stuff. I need people who needed help building websites, that kind of thing. And I do that today. So if you go to katihyer.com, I can help you out.
That's awesome. KatiHyer.com.
There you go. But if you need those mindless things that you can do with kids, dog sitting and dog walking is great. So just think about your situation, dear listeners. Go forth
and childcare.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you recommend with childcare especially when you're strapped for cash?
I recommend to have a friend. You got to be a friend.
Yeah.
When my friends said, "Can you please watch the kids?" I always said yes. I always said yes. Bring them over. I'll feed them. Because A, I loved my friend and I loved her kids, and B, I was really hopeful that she would tell me the same.
Yeah.
I did not have babysitting in the budget. So instead, I opened up my house. So that's what I recommend.
Yeah. I love that. Awesome. Well, your story is incredibly inspiring, and I'm just so thankful. Thank you for talking with us twice now. I thought it was just as like heartwarming and inspiring as it was the first time. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there I think you mentioned your website, the podcast. If people want to get in touch with you to ask about any of the topics we've discussed, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, just hit me up on Instagram at Kati Hyer. Find me there. Easy peasy.
Love it. Love it. Anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to share?
You can do it, listeners. If you want to invest and retire early, you can do it. It's just going to be a lot of hard work. And when y'all do retire early, you got to let me know.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kati.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Maybe we'll have a third conversation one day.
Hopefully not because of technical difficulties.
That's exactly right. Not because of that. Knock on wood. Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye.